Okay, right. So we are up to the Mishnah, I think. Is that right? We've been speeding ahead. We've covered a lot of ground in the last two shurim. So we are now up to the Mishnah on Chof Amud Beis. Chof Amud Beis. Yeah, that's right. Chof Amud Beis. So this is the second Mishnah in the parak. No, it's the third. Second, yes, the second Mishnah parak. That's right. That's right. So the first Mishnah, let's just recap for a second. The first Mishnah dealt with the idea of how your responsibility when you do something in your own property that's going to impact someone else. What is the level of responsibility you have, right? That's like digging the bar next to the thing. So you've got to have a distance, make sure that your effect, and basically the structure of the Mishnah, the first Mishnah, was it deals with various different types of possible damage that you need to take into account, such as the movement of the ground, such as the water damage, such as heat, all these things, right? Now we deal with possible damage in a vertical direction rather than a horizontal one. So let's say you have two people, one on the downstairs floor, one on the ground floor, one on the upstairs floor, and you might choose to put something on your ground floor, which could have a serious impact on the bloke upstairs, right? So the Mishnah says, person not allowed to set up an oven inside their house, unless there is on top of it a height of 4 amos, right? There has to be a height of 4 amos on top of the between the top of the oven and the ceiling, and the reason is that otherwise there is the potential for the oven to set fire to the ceiling. Now the key question I just want you to bear in mind, because we're going to get this in the Mishnah, which is the obvious question here, is we're discussing what you have to do in order to ensure you don't cause a fire, you don't set fire to the other guy's property, whatever it is, right? Question is, if you take precautions and the damage happens, does that mean you're liable or not? Does it indemnify you? That's the right word, isn't it? Right? Yes. Indemnify you against, a good word, yes, against the damage because you followed the rules. This is a classic question in contemporary legal right, law as well, right? If you're supposed to take certain precautions, but are you still liable if you did take the precautions but something goes wrong? That's the question. So anyway, so that's the first one. The second is if you're placing it upstairs, that means to say there's two floors. Well, you live upstairs, someone else, 2 flats. Yeah, you live upstairs, someone else is downstairs. Has to be underneath it a ma'aziva. Ma'aziva is the thickness of it's what you sort of line the roof with, effectively. Yeah, the ma'aziva is the thickness of the roof that is going to and Rashi, it's basically kind of the clay or the cement or the lime, whatever it is, that the thickness that you make the roof of the guy's property below, so that it doesn't set fire. It's thick enough to ensure there's no fire caused by the heat of the oven on the upstairs story. Yeah. But if it's a kira, it has to be a thickness of a tefach. Now, a kira is less hot than a tanur. If you remember the Mishnah at the beginning of the third parak of Shabbos, it teaches us what a difference between a tanur and a kira is. The parak is called parak kira, 2 and 1. But the difference is not just 2 and 1, but also the kira is by definition not as hot. And the reason is, I think, because, well, Rashi just says they don't make as large a fire inside the kira as they do an oven. Gets hot. A tanur in those days, I've always kind of imagined it as a bit like we've got a pizza oven nowadays or a matzah oven. Yeah, you ever see matzah baking? Yeah, then you know how hot an oven can get. And this thing is it's done in so fast because the thing is so hot. So that was the type of ovens they were used to. Okay, so those are the 2 cases, right? Wherever you live, upstairs or downstairs, make sure that you don't cause a fire either way and take precautions. Vim Hizik, says the Mishnah, but if it causes damage, you still have to pay the damage that it causes. Even though you've taken the precautions, but if you then cause damage, you still have to pay. So the obvious question is what? If I've got to pay anyway, what's the difference? So that's the question Rashi's going to deal with. Okay, what's the difference? Yeah. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Rashi's going to deal with that problem. Rabbi Shimon says, let's finish the Mishnah first. Whole purpose of the shirim, Reb Shimon says, is that whole purpose of these measurements is that if it causes damage, you're potter. That's the whole point. I've taken my precautions. What happens afterwards is not my problem. If there's some freak heat that sets fire to the roof, well, it wasn't my fault. So that's Reb Shimon is chayil. Then we have a.
If you burn upstairs house and people get killed, I mean, it's you can't. The fact is, it's still sensible to put in a 4 amos protection between the oven and the roof.
It's sensible, but surely the purpose of the distance is to allow you to do what you want to do. And if you're going to have to anyway pay for damage it causes, then what's the purpose of saying, oh, you've got to distance it a certain amount?
Because it's still a sensible thing to do. That's why. If there was some, it's a bit like asbestos, right?
Right.
You put asbestos on roofs to stop them, just to keep in heat or whatever.
Yeah.
And asbestos is a very good way of doing that.
Yeah.
The problem is if someone else drills through the asbestos and breathes in the asbestos, they get cancer and they die.
Yeah.
So in that situation, before they knew what asbestos did, it was a sensible thing to do that.
Yes.
Right. But it has a consequences they weren't aware of at the time. And that's like you can't do anything about that. You use the best intentions you have. If it causes damage, eventually you're going to have to deal with it. It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't put it in the space anyway to start with.
You're saying that you're trying to say that you can have a requirement to make it distinct to distance, and yet you're still chayav. You're still chayav. But the thing is that surely on what basis? It's not arbitrary, right? What basis does the Chazal say 4 amos? Why do you have to have a 4 amma head height above your oven between the top of your oven and the ceiling? What's the what?
It's presumably that the heat dissipates.
Exactly, right? The assumption is the heat dissipates. So in the event that it doesn't, right, and as some freak accident that the heat manages to go 5 ammas, why should you be chayav for that? That's what I'm asking. I'm just kind of paying,
Well, maybe you heated your oven up so much hotter than it should be a normal oven.
But presumably, the whole point of the measurements isn't the whole point of the measurements to say that we're taking into account, as far as we possibly can, what should be normal damage, and if it goes beyond that, why should I be liable for that?
Because you're still damaging.
Because you're still causing damage.
Yeah. Are we not defining onus?
Well, in a way, it would seem that we are. In other words, you're saying that if it does do it, it's an onus, right? That's what you're saying, yeah. That's what you're saying. Okay, let's pause the mission here then and see Rashi now, because we'll stay on this point, because the second case is the second half of the mission is a separate case. Rashi says, okay, Yeshal Gabel Chalol Gova Arba Amos has to be an airspace which is 4 amos, with Piatana the tikra from the mouth of the tanner until the roof, until the ceiling, so that the fire doesn't set fire to the roof. If it's on the upstairs floor, then you've got to make sure that the thickness of it's the ceiling and the floor. You know what I mean? The barrier between the two properties has to be. Rashi brings an old French word, that has to be 3 tefachim thick. So it shouldn't burn the roof of the ground floor of the ground flat, the downstairs flat. And above it has to be 4 amos. Has to be 4 amos. I'm not sure why Rashi adds here on top of it 4 amos. I think it must be referring to the thing downstairs. I'm not sure why, unless Rashi. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's the roof of the whole building. I mean, if you live upstairs, you've clearly got to take precautions. Yeah. Exactly. You're right. Yes, you've got to have both. Yeah. What is a akira? Has to have a ma'aziva of only a tefach. Avikli cheres. That is earthenware shofsim kedera al chalal. They put a pot on its on top of the kira. It's not as hot. It doesn't get as hot as a tan. V'im hizik, says Rashi. V'im hizik achar shahoyu shom kol ashirin alolu. If after you add all these measurements, you've done everything you need to do, and it causes damage, mashani masha hizik, you pay the damage. Now here Rashi answers the question. But even so, ma'akvin olav hashchenim aharchik b'chol ashirim alolu. The neighbors can still prevent him and require him to make these distances in case it sets fire to their house and he can't afford to pay for it. So that's all Rashi learns. In other words, yeah, it's a precaution to keep the the neighbors safe, right? In the sense that it's not about, the Tanna Kama says this is not about saying, oh, well, if you distance that distance, then you've done everything you need to do and you're now potter. No, if you causes damage, whatever damage is caused from your property, it's you're chayiv. What's the purpose of the distancing? Just as a safety requirement for the neighbors in case that they can't get money from you. You might not have any money to pay. You might claim you might be bankrupt at the time. So therefore, they've got a distance in these requirements. Rabbi Shimon says there's no Rashi in Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says no. The purpose of the shiurim is im hizik potem l'shali. So what exactly is the machlokas here between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Shimon? Seems to be that the machlokas is what exactly the purpose is of these shiurim, of these measurements, of these requirements, right? Does distance 4 amas, and what is the purpose? Rabbi Shimon says the purpose is because Chazal made an evaluation and they said anything beyond 4 amas is like there's an onus. You're not chayav, right? You're only chayav for what would be the damage. Would it be, you would expect the damage to be, and this is unexpected damage. It's a complete onus. It's a bit like you digging a bar. If we take the example of the previous Mishnah, you're digging a bar 5 tefachim away, and if for some reason the water manages to penetrate the other guy's property. Okay, but that's not something I could possibly account for. I did what I was, what I needed to do. And Tanna Kama says no. That's not the idea at all. Chazal did not evaluate that the limit and the damage would only be a 4 amma damage. No, the damage could be anything. Who knows? Like you said, maybe heat the oven a bit more that day, and it has nothing to do with that at all. The purpose of the enactment of 4 ammas was to try and prevent most situations, kind of normal situations, and give a bit of a safety buffer for the guy upstairs. Does that make sense? I think that's what we're saying. That's the real machlokas. Are Chazal enacting something and saying beyond that you're potter because it's an onus, or Chazal saying no, not at all. It could go much further. But the point is we want a level of protection in case you can't pay. So we'll enact some procedures which ensure that there is space to cover most cases, if you like. What do you mean? Well, the question is what. That's the question. The question is what principle are they working from? That's exactly the point. Are they working from the basis of we want to we have calculated that beyond this is an onus, right? Or are they saying no? You're chayav for any damage it causes in this scenario. Hasn't got a bearing in the previous mission, right? This particular scenario, no. You causes damage, you're chayav. Why are we putting these things in place? Because your neighbor needs some protection. So in case you can't pay, so therefore we'll put this in. I think so. Yeah. So the next case in the Mishnah is a person is not allowed to open a shop, a bakery. Now we had this. The Gemora brought this case, if you remember, Mishal Tzavoin, or a dyeing shop. Underneath his friend's otsar. That means he's using the upstairs story. The other guy's using the upstairs story to store fruit in, for example. And if you open downstairs a bakery or a dyer's shop, what's going to happen? Well, the smell is actually going to affect it. Velo refes bokar, and neither a cowshed. It's also going to damage the wine. Now the Gemara says, but MS in truth, and there's a whole question who exactly Be'emes is, but Be'emes, and when the Mishnah says Be'emes in truth, with wine they permitted it. Avolo refes bokar. The Rashi says if it was a storehouse of wine, they permitted you to open underneath it a shop, a baker's shop at Savoy, or a dyer's shena oshim kosher yain, because the smoke of these things actually doesn't cause damage to wine. Avolo refes bokar, but not a cowshed. Why? Because that reach, that smell, damages the wine. And the Gemara will explain exactly why, what this means. What do you mean it doesn't damage? Why should the smoke not damage the wine? So the machlokas here is whether or not you're allowed to cause these, to do these things and to cause damage to the which might cause damage to the sensitive use that the guy upstairs has made of his property. The machlokas is, how far does it go? Is it just refes boka, or does it go further to other things as well?
Just to clarify, this is already when the guy has a store.
So that was exactly why we bought this Mishnah, because we bought this Mishnah as a proof on the second Amud of the parak, right? On the Ches Amud Aleph, we bought this Mishnah. Most of the Mishnahs in this parak we've already learned. That's what we said. We've covered most of them in the context of that machlokas that we had, that key machlokas in Abai and Rava. The Gemora brought it in the middle of Yud Ches Amud Aleph. And the Gemara said, Tamo deka oitza. The implication is that only because he's already got the storehouse there, right? Haleka oitza, right? Of it, if there's no storehouse, you're allowed to open a shop, a bakery downstairs. If the guy hasn't yet established and we said that's a question. That's a question on. It's important. You'll see why it's important to go over this. That's a question on Rava, because remember Rava said you're not allowed to. You can't set it up, because the guy might, in the future, decide to use his property for this use. What was the Gemara's answer? The Gemara says that in this case, everyone agrees. Abai and Rava, everyone agrees that it is a that is no. So here, what's it? Leko to Ovid. Yeah. We said no. So we said Diroshani. That's right. Diroshani. Why is it that here you are allowed to do so? Everyone agrees it's allowed. That's right. Here, the answer we gave in the Gemara was, here, both Abai and Rava agree that it's allowed. Why? Because Diroshani, Dir is a dwelling place, but it's a bit confusing. Doesn't really mean a dwelling place. It means that these are normal usages of your property, to open a bakery or to open a dye shop or to open a cowshed, right? To prevent you doing so, Rashi says there, Ein lanu le'eso dirose olav elo kain hahezek muchon. Chazal are very, very careful when it comes to preventing the use of your house. Big difference between your house, I think, and your garden, if you know what I mean, or your chotzer. Very big difference, right? To stop you using your house for a normal use, which is, for example, to sell bread, that in those days, it was all mixed up. Houses, nowadays as well, right? Houses and people suffer from the houses to do, they say, houses as well. But anyway, houses, and this is considered to be a normal use of your property. To restrict it is Chazal did not impose that restriction. Elem kein hahezek muchon, Rashi says, unless there's a clear and present damage happening now. Are you with me? So here, that's why everyone agrees, that it's only if the bloke upstairs has already got his oitza there. So there's direct damage being caused now. Otherwise, it is. Otherwise, it's okay. Okay.
When the minimum is not to have commercial enterprises within the residential area.
And this is that D1 use, yeah. No, absolutely. Could well be. I mean, it's so much of these type of things in Choshen Mishpat, when it comes to the actual halacha, this is what a Beis Din will ask, we'll work out, well, what is the current practice, the minhag, it's definitely, I think it's definitely relevant. I mean, there is a that where Tosfos there says, brings Rashi here, or Rashi says the same thing, I think, in Rashi learns that the problem is the smoke. That's what Rashi learns. The problem is the smoke. But Rabbeinu Tam disagrees. He says the reason is not to do with the smoke, it's to do with the heat. It's to do with the heat, which seems to also damage the oats in some way. Yeah.
It makes more sense because you could smoke something next door to someone and damage their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is linked to the Gemora, so maybe let's see the Gemora first. But But anyway, that's what the Gemora says there, and that's how we see it. And let's see. Okay, so let's see the Gemora. Once of all, Tanya, but Tanya Rabba the Kira Shlosha. When it says that you've got to put it in the upstairs, you need the oven needs to be four amos, right, between the top of the oven and the roof, and underneath it's got to be a maziva of the floor has to be a thickness of 3 tefachim. The problem is there's a brisa which says b'tanor arbo b'kiro shlosha that it has to be when you put it upstairs. The tanor, the oven has to be 4. I think it's 4 tefachim, and b'kiro shlosha, and the miklet and the kira is 3 tefachim. The kira is 3 tefachim. So that means that's not like we say in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says it's got to be underneath at 3 tefachim and a kira at 1 tefach. So it's different. These measurements, which are greater, are talking about a baker's oven, which they always fire up the whole time, and therefore that's the thing. The Tekiyatani was an achtomen. The Tanur Didon kikira donachtomen domi. Our ovens, which are hotter, are like a kira of the baker's ovens. Does that make sense? The kira is a kira is less hot, is not as hot as a tanur. Our tanurim are the same level of heat as of a kira of an achtomen. Makes sense? Yeah.
Gemora too with proper they set up proper ventilation to stop the heat, sort of to manage the heat, push it out.
But you can still, I think it seems to be a fire problem. So maybe nowadays, I don't know. Nowadays you can take precautions. It's true.
Now with decent ventilation.
Maybe. That's right. Could be. It could be. I mean, Toras says here that basically everyone used to make ovens, of course, how they wanted to, large or small. But the kiros of Nachtomen, they were all equal. They knew exactly what they were. They had a fixed standardized measurements. Let's see. Rashi and Gemora. Put it in the upstairs story. With the tanner, you have a thickness of 4 tefachim, the thickness of the floor beneath it. With the kira shlosha, with the kira is 3 tefachim. With the nachtomen shmasikin so tomid, they fire it up all the time. Kira, kira nachtomen, the kira as well is talking about a kira of bakers. Now the next case in the Mishnah, the Gemara carries on the next case in the Mishnah. The brother says, so this we also brought on Yud Chesam Adalef. If the refes boker, if the cowshed preceded the oitza, preceded the guy's store upstairs, it is okay. It is okay. I'll do one more Rashi. Tana don. Do we do that? Fine. It's the same as the kira of the nachtomen. So the Tana is the refes boker. If the refes boker preceded the storehouse on top, then it's mutter. Boy asked the following question: what happens if he cleaned out and sort of prepared the upstairs for the otza, for the storehouse? So in other words, he basically what he did was he set it all up, ready to bring in the produce, but he hasn't actually brought it in. So the question is that considered to be as if it's there first? Or that means to say it's as if the guy upstairs has now arrived with his fruit already because he's prepared to bring it in, or not. You have to actually bring the produce in as it's to make it as if you're already there. Riba b'chalonos mahu. The Gemara asked another shaila and says, Abai asked a second shaila, which was, what happens if you increase the windows? Now, increasing the windows and the upstairs story is a clear sign that you want to use it to store produce in, because you don't want it to go moldy. You will increased ventilation for the produce, right? So that's another sign. Or another question he asked was, the Bach, I think, skips out the next bit. Bona aliyah al gabi beso ma. What happens if he builds an upper story on top of his house? And they used to build there an otza. They used to build there he built an upper story on top of the roof, another story, and they used to use that as the storehouse for the fruit. So here, the question is, these questions are building up one on top of the other, in the sense that if you're going to say that adding windows is not considered to be something which defines it as if you've already put the storehouse in there, what about if you created the entire building for that purpose? You built a whole aliyah on top of your house, which was the normal thing to do to create a store place, like an upstairs being used as a cellar or something. So on that, the Gemara says, Teku. These are all left unresolved. What What happens if what is the case with dates and pomegranates? If you bring in dates and pomegranates, is that considered to be the beginning of the storehouse? Or maybe, do we say a storehouse is only, an oitzer is only, let's say, grain and wine and oil? And therefore, my take, this is also left unresolved. So what do you do? It's a good shiloh, right? What do you do? The more it is unresolved, the more it says, well, it's not clear whether these things are considered to be the beginning of an oitzer. So let's say this happens lemaisa, right? Someone has done this to his upstairs story. He has, he's done these various indicators that he's preparing it as an oitzer, or he's actually using it to store pomegranates, for example. And the guy says, well, the Gemora leaves it unresolved, so I can open my kasha downstairs. What would you say? Not good.
I'm surprising. It seems to me something you could fairly easily make a ruling on.
Oh, I mean, to resolve it either way.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it would say if the guy's already, I don't know, put in.
You're asking why the Gemara leaves it unresolved.
I was going to use it as an answer. So what would be the kasha?
The question is, what is an oitzer? That's the question. You see, the question is, this is all about norms, behavioral norms, right? So you've got to make sure that you don't cause damage to someone else, right? In a situation where they are, I assume, using their property in a normal way upstairs. Now, it could be that putting in pomegranates is an unusual use of a property. So maybe I don't need to bother about that. Maybe I'm not required. Maybe that's the logic.
Maybe it's a pomegranate lever. I mean, it's kind of, it seems a very random example.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's pause on that for a second. Let's see Rashi, and then I'm going to show you the Rosh, because the Rosh deals with this question about how you resolve it, because it's left as a teku. Teku means there's no resolution, which strengthens Eli's question. You know that. The difference between a kasha and teku, right? Kasha is there is a resolution, but the Gemara doesn't like it for various reasons. Teku is tishbi ataretz kushim v'subayis. So I wait till Eliyahu Novi. There's no resolution. I have a sefer at home which has every single teku and shas inside it. I haven't quite worked out the purpose of the sefer, because meaning all it does is just gathers every teku and shas. It's called teku. there's no purpose. Yeah, either that or it was a useful way of publishing a sefer, because you just gather them all together. Everything was in the pre-Google era. What? I don't know. I can't remember. It's a whole sefer. It's a lot. No. There's a lot. Probably easier. I reckon probably about 100. I imagine more. It comes a lot. If you think about it, more than 100. Yeah, there's a lot of takers. Okay, well, let's see Rashi, and then we'll see the Rosh. So the Rashi says, "Kibbut ribbits gago." You got it. It's about 3/4 of the way down. Kibbut ribbits gago. So if he prepared, kibbut is really cleaning. Ribbits is usually, at least in Hilchos Shabbos, I think ribbits is when you sprinkle water on the floor to kind of, reduce the dust. But these are preparations for bringing in fruit. So he prepared his roof for the oitza, but he didn't manage to bring in the produce until this guy had already opened the shop underneath. Was it like, does that mean the shop downstairs, the bakery downstairs, is preceding the oitza? Or maybe the preparatory stages means that your oitza comes first and you can stop the other guy downstairs. The second shadow was if he puts windows upstairs, so then he's demonstrating that he's going to use it as a storehouse, so the air aerates the produce, so it doesn't rot. But what was that? 370. There you go. See the wonders. There you go. Right, now we know. You remember those days when there were things we didn't know? Now we know everything. There was an upstairs on top of his house, on top of his roof. So they used to build there for a storehouse. Now, what's the loch? If you're going to say increasing windows is not considered to be preceding, if the whole building was made for this, what's the halacha? That's what Abai is doing. Often when you have these series of shilas, each one builds on the one before. So Abai is saying, if you're going to tell me that it's not enough of a demonstration that you're going to put a note in just because you add a few windows, if I build a whole story, maybe that is a clear demonstration that I'm going to use it to store fruit in, because presumably that's what they did. Tamri v'Ramoni brought in dates and pomegranates. Is that the beginning of the story? So Dilma maybe maybe a story is only with grain, wine, and oil. Right, let me just see. I don't know if you've got a regular Gemara there, you can see the Rosh. If not, then I'll just read it. Don't worry. Art Scroll haven't yet published the Rosh, so it's not in the Art Scroll. But if you're in the regular Gemara, then it is. So the Rosh you'll find very soon after the end of the Masechta. Where is it? Okay, so the Rosh is Simon Vav. The Rosh is split into Simonim. That's how the easiest way to find things in the Rosh. You've got you're literally Simonim, as in Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, whatever. So it's the second column. If you've got a regular edition, it's it's Kuf Pei Aleph on the base. Can you see that? Kuf Pei Aleph on the base. If you follow down the first column on the right hand side, and you'll see Simon Hay, and after that you'll see there's a Hay on the side. You see that, and then there's a Vov. You see the Vov, yeah? So the Vov is the Mishnah. You got it? Those who have it anyway. Yeah. He brings the Mishnah, the second half of the Mishnah. Says says Tanya, the Brisa says, if the Refes Bakar preceded the Oitzar, then it's mutter. Now the Rosh adds in first little chiddush. Afal pi the hovu geri delay. He kind of like just brings in the just segues into the Gemara that we learned on Yechesam with Aleph, puts it all together. He says, even though it's Gerei delay, what does that mean? It's his arrows, which we said even Rabbi Yossi agrees is problematic. That means to say, when you have your cowshed underneath, what's happening? The fumes are directly damaging the oitza. Okay, so how can it be that if the Refes Bakar came first before he opened the Oitzer upstairs, you're allowed to stay there. It's like you're shooting the arrows at him. So the answer is, as we said, Mishum de Diroshani, because normal use of your house, putting a cowshed in is normal. So as long as you were there first, you don't have to worry about the guy using upstairs for an Oitzer. You're allowed to use your property in a normal way. And then he brings the shailas of Abaye. And then he brings the next one. Now here he is. The kivan delay of shitu. So he says, since it's not resolved in the Gemara, we do not require him to distance because it's unresolved. So that's the answer. Meaning because the Gemara is left doesn't resolve this shaila about dates and pomegranates. So therefore, the person who is below is allowed to open his bakery or his dyeing, or whatever he's doing downstairs, and he doesn't have to take any notice of the person's pomegranate shop upstairs, pomegranate storehouse upstairs. Yeah. So it seems to be that because, let's just think about this a second, because it's unresolved, the burden of, not the burden of proof, it's the burden of proof to force him not to use his property in a damaging way rests on the person suffering the damage. So let's try and unpick this for a second. It's almost like he can turn around, the guy who wants to open the cowshed downstairs or whatever, can turn around to the guy upstairs and says, you're complaining that my cows, the methane gas of my cows, for example, is going to damage your pomegranates. Okay, it's true, they may do. But since the Gemara didn't tell me, since Chazal did not, left it unresolved as to whether or not that's something I need to guard against, you prove to me that I'm not allowed to use my property in the way I wish to. I would say that's how you should phrase it. It's almost like the assumption, where's the starting point? What was that?
You can't prove it the other way around. Whereas you have a tazaka that if it wasn't using it, then I can open my bakery, right?
Wasn't using it for what?
That makes sense.
In what do you mean? If he wasn't using it for what? Oh, if he wasn't using it for anything. Upstairs.
So, exactly.
Right.
So the burden of proof is on him to say, no, I already...
Exactly. And the assumption seems to rest with the person who owns the property saying, I'm doing something which is allowed, which is normal. You prove to me that I can't use my house in this way. Effectively.
Otherwise, the upstairs guy can block him forever.
Exactly.
Or basically that really, whatever you do to your upstairs, windows, public, until it's a storehouse, it's not a storehouse.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Exactly.
It's not a storehouse until the fat lady sings.
That's right. until it's a defined storehouse. I mean, as to the technical point, which Ellie raised before, is like, why would you make? It seems like a very strange distinction to make. What's the difference between wine and oil and pomegranate? You can just learn in a very sort of balabatish way. You can just answer that. It's presumably unclear that these things cause damage to other fruits and things. There are specific things maybe that we know they cause damage to. Who says they?
Okay, if you have a hot bakery downstairs in your fruit store, it's going to damage the fruit. You know what it is.
Or smoke, yeah. Smoking.
It's just interesting. So what? So why should you not then? Why should it not? I'm saying why should there not be? Why should it be then? You're not.
I don't
Yeah.
If you're a trader that trades fruit, you keep the fruit in that floor. Why would that be different? I don't see why.
It must be something. It must be something about the level of damage, that's caused to. Yeah. Then it's not clear. Yeah, I see. Okay. It's interesting because Rabbeinu Gershom says, "Delo mazik lu havlo, delo mazik lu havlo." The heat, the hot air does not cause damage to them. Now he's probably going like Rabbeinu Tam. I mentioned to you that Rabbeinu Tam learns differently to Rashi. Rabbeinu Tam.
Pomegranates, remember, it's just seasonal. There's storing wine and grain
That could be.
the whole time. But there's a chazaka. There's always.
Yeah, that could be. That could be. Adam Chanush of Toman. See, Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, let's see. We'll come to Rabbeinu Tam in a second. Let's see the last bit of the Gemara because you need that to understand it.
If there's a floor between them,
Yeah.
does that make any difference?
Floor between them? No. Well, what do you mean? Why should it make a difference?
I mean, if you have your bakery, then I've got my.
Oh, I see. It would seem that it wouldn't, right? Because here the Gemara doesn't bring measurements and distinctions as it did before. So probably it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, the permitted with the wine. Tana the Gemara says with wine they allowed it. Why? Because it improves it. This is the Gemara, yeah, right at the bottom, just for the Mishnah. So they allow. Why do they allow wine? You know why they allowed wine? Because it improves the quality of the fruits upstairs. And not the refes baka, the cowshed, because it makes it unpleasant. Amar Rav Yisrael says, our fruits, even the candle, like the smoke from a candle, causes damage to our fruits. They're very sensitive. Amar Rav Sheshes says, Aspasta is like a cowshed. Now Rashi says, the last few Rashis, our wine, even smoke coming up from a candle causes damage to it. Aspasta shachas shel tvua, that's like the stubble of the produce. It's moist, it heats up, and it causes mold and all sorts of unpleasant things to the produce upstairs. Now, when I was learning this Gemara, preparing this Gemara, I was like, I had a basic question, so I haven't really got a resolution for it. Why would you, if you before seeing the Gemara, why would you say that they allowed you they said it's fine for you to open a wine? Was it behind the tiro? Yes. This is going at the Be'emes, the second opinion in the Mishnah. The last line of the Mishnah is that if you're storing wine upstairs, there's no problem with opening a bakery or a dyer's shop downstairs. There's only a problem with opening a cowshed. Now, why would you have said it's okay with wine? What logical reason would you have said it's okay with wine? Because it doesn't damage it. Wine sealed or whatever, it doesn't cause a problem, right? There's no problem, right? The Mishnah doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say that, sorry. The Gemara says, why do they allow wine? Because it improves it. But what if you don't like smoked wine? Meaning it is impacting. It is impacting. It is the smoke from the bakery. It's like whiskey. You know, the whiskey that is in the whiskey barrel. You know what I mean? It's in the sherry cask. it's a different story. But you know what I mean? Like, there's something going on there, right? It's something, maybe I don't want wine like that.
But as far as I'm aware, no one likes smoked wine. I've never had anyone.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Well, unless it's got to do with the smoking, unless it's the heating effect.
Oh, so this is where you get to Rabbeinu Tam. So turn now to your Chesed Aleph. Yeah.
Cattle shed is not gonna be
Yeah,
enough.
yes, that's right. So Rashi, I don't know how to resolve Rashi, but look at Rabbeinu Tam. If you turn back to Yud Ches Amud Aleph, sorry to jump around a bit, but this Tosfos is directly relevant to explaining this Gemara. If you turn to Yud Ches Amud Aleph, the second Tosfos, which I don't think we did because it was really relevant to this Gemara. You see that? Pirush HaKuntrus, so Rashi explains, because the smoke damages the storehouse on top. The Kosher Rabbeinu Tam says a problem. Come on, the Gemara we just learned. Omar, it says b'yayin itiru. They allowed it with wine shemashpichoi because it improves it. So he says va'oshan v'adei mazik liyayin. How can you possibly say that? Smoke definitely damages wine. Like he said, Tahar yayin ma'ushan posol and nesachim. I'll give you a simple proof. He says you can't use smoked wine for nesachim. Yeah, the nesachim on the mizbeach, right? You can't use smoked wine. There's a whole long list of wine that's possible for the mizbeach. Fascinating question, which the Gemara actually says in Baba Basra. It's a Gemara it's quite a way ahead, I'm afraid, but in Amocha Peiros, about Daf Kuf thereabouts, there is a whole question about whether the ramifications of wine that was possible for the Mizbeach is a disqualifying feature for Kiddush, for example. How much of a crossover is there between all those things that you weren't allowed to use for the Mizbeach? Are you not allowed to use for Kiddush? Where's the classic question where that has a major halachic ramification? Mavushal. So yain mavushal is possible in Mizbeach, right? Now, so the question is yain mavushal kosher for Kiddush? It is, that's the punchline. But it's not simple, right? It's not simple because the question is how much you learn one from the other. Yeah, halacha, it's okay, as we know, right? You can use mavushal wine for Kiddush. I'm not saying a major Kiddush there, but that's the question. How much? Anyway, either way, smoked wine is possible in Mizbeach. So Rabbeinu Tam says like this: the hezek oshon leika. There's no damage of smoke. Kivon dek oshon tikro mazivalo konisham oshon. This is Eli. Did you ask this about the ceiling, the thickness of the ceiling? You asked about the thickness of the ceiling. Anyway, whatever. The thickness of the ceiling means that smoke is not going to pass by. There's no issue of smoke. The reason is the heat damages it's the heat, right? It's the hevel. The heat damages the storehouse. But the heat improves the wine. We say later on the right text is Rabbi says ours, even a candle causes damage. It has to change the text in the Gemora later on. The Gemora we just said, it means the heat of the candle, not the smoke of the candle. The problem with Rabbeinu Tam's pshat is that the text in our Gemora says kutra d'shraga. Kutra is the kitur ashan. Yeah, it's like a smoke. So that's the problem with it. That's why Rashi probably didn't learn like Rabbeinu Tam. So there you have it. According to Rashi, the problem here is smoke. According to Rabbeinu Tam, the problem here is the heat that's produced by the bakery downstairs or whatever, and that heat improves the wine. It doesn't damage it.
It's a bizarre thing to say.
Is it heat?
Wine and salads going in hot house.
Yeah, but maybe it's not hot house. Maybe wine can have some impact, some positive impact. Heat kind of wine, no, it doesn't.
It's difficult to think about our wine.
Yeah. It's true. They had very strong wine as well. Anyway, okay. Well, that's that. Right. Let's see the next mission. Now the mission is going to talk about, like I said in the message I sent out earlier, you have here in Daf Chof Aleph the Gemora in Shas about Chinuch and the establishment of the school system. Absolutely fascinating Gemora. So we're going to start it now. Says the mission, you're thinking, what on earth is that got to do with Bob? You'll see. A shop in a courtyard. There's a classic question, right? You open a shop, you decide to open a shop in your house or in your courtyard, your part of the courtyard. And that's all very lovely, and everyone's very happy for your new business endeavor, except when the customers start arriving, and especially the ones who say, oh, I couldn't get it during the day. Can I just come at 10 o'clock at night to pick up the pot you made on my behalf, etc., etc., etc. you're selling watches from your back door. You get this picture, yeah? Yeah. And he says if he opens a shop in the courtyard, he can object. The other guy in the courtyard can say, can say to him, I cannot sleep. I can't sleep. People going in and out the whole time. Why? You cannot. You have to remember the courtyard, the chotzer, right? You think of your classic chotzer in the time of the Gemora. Chotzer, houses on either side, yeah. So one guy has his part of the courtyard, and he's opened a shop in his side of the courtyard. He's laid out these beautiful tables with all these watches and stuff that he's selling. And the guy opposite, living in the opposite house courtyard, says, "This is ridiculous. I can't sleep. People coming in all hours of day or night to buy watches." Avalosa kalim, but someone who is making kalim, he is allowed to go out and sell inside the marketplace. There's a bit of a question here as to the text. The marketplace, kind of like there's two parts to it. The girsa that we have is avalosa kalim, someone who makes kalim, he can go and sell in the marketplace, right? But it could be it's two things. You're allowed to make the kalim and you're allowed to sell them outside. You're not allowed to. People can't come to you, but you can go and sell the stuff that you make outside. And he cannot object to him velomar and say, velomar and say to him, I can't sleep. Patish. Neither because of the sound of the hammer, Chaim, or because of the millstone, or because of the noise of the children. So, what do we have in this Mishnah? We have a very, very important Mishnah that sets out something which happens all the time. Yeah, what usage can I make? And this is disturbance, and causing disturbance to my neighbor. And the Mishnah sets out the following clear parameters. You are allowed, according to the Din of the Gemora, yeah. We're not going into dinner de machusa dinner, what you're allowed to use your own private domain for in terms of you're allowed to set up a watch producing factory. But the Mishnah says you are allowed to set up a watch producing factory inside your house and take out that merchandise. You can create those watches and you can bang around and you can have an anvil going and you can know what you want to do, all that stuff. Yeah, you can millstones grinding, it doesn't matter. And then as long as you go and sell it somewhere else, what you can't do is open a shop, open a corner shop in the chotzer and say, I've got a brilliant idea and everyone's going to come to me and buy from me. Because that is people going in and out all the time. That's the problem. So that's the problem. Well, how do you resolve Tinok? What's Tinok's got to do with it? Right, exactly. Look at Rashi on the Mishnah. So Rashi gives you the Hava Minna of the Gemara, that we're talking about children who are coming to buy wine and oil and everything that's sold in a shop. You find this elsewhere in the Gemara as well. I think it's more in Beitza, isn't it? Other places, they used to send the kids. They sent it was recently in Daf Yomi. They send wasn't it? What one are you thinking of? There's a few Gemaras about where they used to send the kids. You measure out, so it belongs to, that's right. They used to send the kids to buy stuff in the shops. Not different, not similar to today, right? They used to send the kids to buy to the shops. They probably sent very young children. Whether we do that or not, I don't know. But that's what now exactly says the Gemara. Look, go straight to the Gemara. Maishna Reisha, Maishna Sefer. What is the difference in the Reisha and the Sefer? Right, look at Rashi, the last line on the Omid. Maishna Reisha Tani Yochalome and Yochalishin Rekan Chosim Vayotzin. First half of the Mishnah says you can't. He can say to him, I can't sleep because of the people coming in and out. The Sefer Katani, the end of the Mishnah says, Eini Yochalom Aloi. He can't say to him, Eini Yochalisha Mikara Tinokas. Right? I can't sleep because of the noise of the kids. Right? So the first case says you are able to object. The second half says you can't say to him, I can't sleep because of the kids coming in to buy the stuff. You with me? That's the problem. Straight contradiction, yes? Is it? Can you object to them or not? So the
saying why would the kids be coming in and out? Because he's taking us to the market.
No. We're assuming that when it says lo mikol hatinokus, okay, so this I think is why. So I said there was some confusion about the girsa. If you look in the Maseres Hashas, those tests, he says there is a girsa avol eino yochel. So it's like a separate case. Yeah, osa kelim, avolosa kelim, yotzemoke b'sochashuk. Can make kelim and sell them in the marketplace. Full stop. Then new thing, right? Avol, but eino yochelim chos v'loima. What can you not object to? You can't object and say I can't sleep because of the noise that your hammer's making, your millstone's making, or the children are making. So the assumption is those children. What on earth are children doing? The children must be coming to buy stuff. Contradiction. You just said people coming in to buy stuff you can object to. That's like I said, the actual lashon of the mission is a bit confusing, but that's where we are, right? So two turutzim. Abai says, and Rabbi Abai says, gives straightforward answer. Sefer son lechotz acheres. The sefer is talking about another courtyard. That means to say, the objection you can raise to people coming in or children, it's not making a distinction between adults or kids, right? People coming in to buy stuff only goes as far as your own chotzer. If you have a house in that chotzer, remember the public shared chotzer, yeah? You have a house in that chotzer, you can say, I don't want anyone coming into my chotzer to buy stuff. But if there's another neighboring chotzer, because you know how they were set up, you remember Erevin, right? So there's a chotzer next door, right? And there's other houses there. You can't say, oh, that noise that's coming from the next door chotzer, it's too far, too far. If they've got an agreement in that chotzer that they're happy for people to come in, you know, they're running a shopping center racket in the chotzer next door, right? And everyone there is happy to allow people to go in and out, kind of mutually beneficial black market going on. That's okay. Or white market, whatever, yeah? That's going on. That's okay. You can't object because you're in a different chotzer. And that end of the Mishnah says Abai is simply talking about another chotzer. You can't object to children's noise or noise of kids, whatever, people going to buy another chotzer. Amalei Rava. Rava says that.
Big stretch though.
Yeah, that's Rava's question. Look, Amalei Rava. If so, let's should just say another courtyard is mutter. You know, well, you're changing the whole parameters. You're bringing in a totally new case. We're talking about people living in the same chotzer. So why on earth wouldn't it say, right? So that's a problem. Elo Amar Rava, Rava says, totally new case. Sefer Ason, Tinoka Shobes Rabon. You know what the end of the mission is talking about? The guy has opened a school. He's opened a school. Tinoka Shobes Rabon. Rosh Tevas Tashbar. Tinoka, because where it comes from. Tinoka Shobes Rabon. He's opened a school in his. What? Yes. No, I don't send my kids to that school. I have no need to plug a charity campaign. We've also been bombarded all day from the messages. Yeah, okay. No, but that's where it comes. No, Tashbar happens to be the name of the school in Israel. There are many schools all over the world with the word name tight and all over the place with Tashbar, and that's what it stands for. Tinoka Shel Place Rabon. Yeah, I know it sounds like some Persian word that has got nothing to do with Judaism, but that's where it comes from.
Does that mean it's only at night time that if you do it during the day? Why can I use that?
It's interesting that it is interesting that I'm not sure whether the Gemora. It could be the Gemora talks about that. It could be the Gemora talks. Yeah, it could be the Gemora talks about that. Why does it specifically say? It's almost like, you know, when you see those words, it's almost like the Mishnah's going to dramatize. Why is the Mishnah dramatizing it? Like, I can't sleep. You can just object to the noise.
It was during the day when people don't tend to sleep.
Yeah. It could be. I don't know. It could be. You're using it at a strange time. Yeah. But let's.
You have the right to sleep. What if he's not well? You have the right to use your home.
Exactly. Yeah, you can be sleeping anytime.
There's quiet on the street.
You can. In hot countries, you can. In Israel, now it's less common, but as it used to be in Israel, where there was the assumption that people used to sleep for an hour and a half, they're quiet time during the day. The shops, I think, even the siesta in Mediterranean countries was like a
2 till 4.
2 till 4. No, and there are rules. Like you're supposed to be quiet.
On a Friday, you still have people who, like, because it used to be between 2 and 4.
Yeah.
It
The
was
shops closed.
Yeah.
Shops closed.
Quiet. So literally, you'd have neighbors. Personal experience. You'd have neighbors coming around, knocking on the door at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday and saying the kids are making a noise in the car.
Yes. They would object.
Kids are making noise.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, in the garden, they will object to noise. Yeah.
Just at Friday.
On a Friday.
In Bnei Brak,
A very old minhag in Yerushalayim.
In the summer.
Yeah.
in Bnei Brak, when we lived in Bnei Brak, this was really, really common.
They were in the swimming pool.
Yeah. In Bnei Brak, this is really common still.
Yeah.
That the shops, everything closed for several hours in the afternoon, and then they would stay open till 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
They'd open up anyway. But look, but what Rava is saying is like this. Rava says that the case at the end of the Mishnah is you cannot object to someone opening a school in the courtyard and say, I can't sleep because of the noise of the kids. That's what it's talking about, right? And it's talking about ever since Yehoshua ben Gamla first instituted the modern schooling system. However, Zachar also, or indeed, Zachar also Tov. Remember this man for good, Yehoshua ben Gamla Shmoi. His name was Yehoshua ben Gamla. She'el if not for him, Nishtachach Torah Yisrael. The whole Torah would have been forgotten from the Jewish people. At the beginning, somebody used to have a father. Well, that's all right. He used to teach his son Torah. Someone who didn't have a father, wouldn't learn Torah. My Jewish, what did they expound? They learned the words in Shema, or you shall teach them. So they said no. They explained it to mean atem. You do the teaching. You have to do the teaching. Parents, that's it. Father's teaching, that's it. His scheme they instituted, right? They instituted that they would set up people teaching kids in Yerushalayim. My Drosh, they expand the posuk. The Torah comes out of Tzion, which is Yerushalayim. Someone had a father, would take him to Yerushalayim, so he would be taught. Misha ein lo yav, lo yal oila v'lomet. He wouldn't be no one taking him to Yerushalayim. He wouldn't learn. His scheme of the institution, they instituted a schooling system in every province. That's what they used to do. And it carries on. And it carries on to. We can recap it next time. I'll just do a few more lines. They used to bring them in when they were 16 or 17 years old. That's what they started. They realized that's a disaster. They should start school at the age of 16 or 17, and that's a disaster. And some of the teacher, the Rebbe, used to get angry with him. He would kick him and leave, walk out. You can't discipline a child. You can't start a schooling system at the age of 16 because they're not going to understand what schools are. Yehoshua ben Gamla, this is what he did. Yehoshua ben Gamla came along. The Tikkun, he instituted they had to institute teachers in every district, in every city, and they brought them in stages 6 or 7. And you will see from this Gemora that it is incredible. Almost everything in this Gemora has not changed. And the modern schooling system could be taken directly from the Gemora. We only just begun it. There's a lot more here. The Gemara goes through the whole thing, how the schools operate, maximum class sizes. I'm telling you, it's amazing. Teaching assistants is in here, the whole lot. Well, so Yehoshua ben Gamla, look at Rashi. Let's do the few Rashis on. There's only a few Rashis. Even though it's a noise from others, yeah, he can't object because Mishum Takon Yehoshua ben Gamla. Who was he? He lived in the time of the Bayis Sheni, second Beis Hamikdash, and he was one of the Kohanim Gedolim. And they explain, they said the father has to teach. A plach is Chabri Medinus plach echad v'lo farchia. It's a lot of districts in one province. That's what it means, a province, a plach. There's a huge amount here. We'll to go over this a little bit tomorrow. There's Tosfos, amazing stuff. So it really is. It's just like, what was that? No, well, that's the thing. It used to be like it was homeschooling. No, but it was how it was to Beis Yaakov before Beis Yaakov.
Yeah.
That's what was happening to the boys. The mothers used to teach the girls right until the 1920s, whatever. 1930s.
Opening schools in residential premises ever since.
Yeah, so it is. Okay. See you, Yossi. Take care. Okay. Much better. Bye.
Only